Hey seniors, let's talk about backpacking. I'm Michael Scott. I'm your host for Seniors in Action, where we talk about topics of interest to seniors. And I have to admit, backpacking is very hard for a senior citizen. I mean, you've got to have stayed in shape. You've got to get in shape if you're not in shape. And once you're in shape, it's still pretty difficult, especially if you've got young bucks with you that are running ahead and leaving you behind. But hopefully you've got somebody else your age that you can walk with. But I've been backpacking now for, 30 or 40 years, every year, several times a year. And specifically, I've been backpacking for, I think this was the 19th year with the group that I've been going with. So we just got back from the Green River Lakes in Wyoming, Wind River Range. There were 9 of us that went. We had a nice time. We fished. We backpacked. We did not go as far as we usually do with backpacks anyway. We did some day hikes. But I'm 70 years old now, and so, you start getting a little bit slower. And I was carrying more weight this year than what I usually do, and so that slowed me down a little bit. Anyway, but backpacking, I mean, if you try backpacking and you like it, you'll see the most beautiful country that you've ever seen, and it's a country that most people do not ever see. And and you'll get some of the best fishing that you've ever had if you like to fish, and some of the best photography. And so there's a lot of benefits to it. One of the reasons I stay in shape now is because I don't want to be in the hills out of shape. I know I went 5, 6, 7 years ago up over what is called Jackass Pass to the Cirque of the Towers in Wyoming, a very popular spot, and I was not in shape, and it about killed me. And so when I came home, I decided I was going to get in shape before next year, and I've stayed in shape pretty good. Even at 70 years old, I've stayed in shape fairly good. So, but you got to do that, or it's a pretty miserable experience to be backpacking. And as you get older, you've got to lessen the distance and lessen the weight that you carry. So let's talk about backpacking then a little bit. So before we do that, we've got our disclaimer that we've got. You see that every time. If you click on something in the comments section of this video and buy it, we'll get a commission. And so go ahead and do that if you want. We like commissions. All right, so the first thing you do when you're backpacking is you really need to plan your trip. Where are you going to go? How many days you're going to stay? Where are you going to go each day? And this does change. I mean, the itinerary will change depending on how you feel when you're out in the field. But this is the itinerary I used for this Green River backpacking trip that we just finished. And so we were going to arrive on July 8th. And only hike 2.4 miles back in with our backpacks, which is a pretty easy day because usually we go 5, 6, 7 miles. And when I was at Glacier National Park last year, we did 11 miles in one day, which is especially over a big pass. And so that is very difficult. This was not too bad. Except I left all my medicine behind, so I had to go back to the truck and walk 2.4 miles back and then 2.5 miles back to then. So I ended up walking about 7.5 miles that day, which pretty much did me in. But this is the type of itinerary. I send this out in April for people to look at it that want to go backpacking in July. So I organize these trips for us. And so Tuesday we were going to go do a day hike up to Twin Lakes. And Wednesday, we were going to go over to Slide Lake. We decided Wednesday we'd actually move our camp so it was a little bit closer to Slide Lake and Clear Lake to where you take off, and so we did that. So we didn't stick exactly to this itinerary, but then Friday we came out. We walked out 2.4 miles, somewhere in there, and left. But it was a good week, and so you need to plan ahead, tell your people where you're going to go, invite people to come, see who wants to come. If they say maybe, they're probably not going to make it. I don't think I've ever had a maybe that's actually come along on the trip. So, but you do have, sometimes you get some die-hard backpackers, and some of them are older, but some of them are younger, in their 40s and 50s, and they do pretty darn good still, as opposed to those who are in their 60s and 70s. So let's look at your gear, all right? This is a list of gear that I take for a 5-day backpacking trip. You don't need a lot of food for 5 days. I mean, you can eat trout out of the fish out of the lake, and so you don't want to carry too much food. We had a young guy last year that was a pretty grueling backpacking trip, and he carried 20 pounds of rice and a whole bottle of oil and all sorts of stuff. And so he learned his lesson, and so this year he traveled much lighter. And so if you look at this, we got the backpacking gear there, a sleeping bag, a sleeping mat. A sleeping mat is important to keep you warm up in the mountains. Your backpack, your headlamp, hiking poles, backpacking stove, cooking gear, that sort of thing. You kind of need a tent. When I was young in high school, my brother and I would go up and we'd never have a tent. We'd just sleep under the stars. And luckily enough, we never got rained on. But on some of the tracks, the backpacking trips I've done the last 17 years, we got soaked. And so a good tent is very important, and it's got to be a light tent that holds out rain, whether it has a rain fly or not. My tent doesn't have a rain fly, but it does hold out the rain very well. But it's an expensive tent. So bear spray, chapstick, things like that. You can see what else is on the list. The fishing gear, if you don't want to fish, bring your camera gear. I didn't put a lot of camera gear on here, but last year at Glacier National Park, I mean, there was a fellow there, one of the guys there must have carried almost 15 pounds of camera gear because he liked taking photos and he was a good photographer. So, but he didn't bring as much fishing gear, so there's trade-offs. And then you bring your food. Most of the food can be dried food. It can be Mountain House type food or ramen noodles, whatever you want to eat up there. But just don't pack too much. I mean, you don't need a lot. I don't tend to be hungry up in the mountains that much, so I don't eat a lot in the mountains. Dried fruit, nuts are good. Things that are pretty light to carry. I usually bring apples. So, just look at that. I like Crystal Light or Gatorade because sometimes the water is filtered. You bring a water filter and you filter the water and it still doesn't taste that good. So it depends on where you are. So those are some of the things. And let me just talk about gear. I mean, we're senior citizens. We should have a little bit more money, but we're older and we're slower. And so we need to get good gear, good light gear. Good gear is light gear, and you don't find that kind of gear at, say, Cabela's or something like that because most of their stuff is good gear, but it's heavy. So you've got to go to backpacking specialty shops usually to find good light gear. And I think my tent was $325, but I've had it now for, probably 12 years, and I've used it for 12 years in a row. So it's a good tent. It's a light tent. It's very small, and I'll show you a picture of it here in a minute. But yet, let the young bucks carry the 60-pound packs. I mean, that's too much for you to carry when you're older. So carry 35 pounds or less, and much less if you can. I mean, there are some people that carry much less than that. But my pack generally tends to run about 35 pounds, and I like that much weight. It's not too bad. So usually you bring a little day pack along if you're going to be doing some day hikes, so you can carry some water with you and maybe some snacks, that type of thing that you strap on, and generally another pair of camp shoes because you get tired of walking in your boots. So when you get to camp, it's nice to change those. So look at that. Look at that list. Use that list. I think the only thing that's not on there is a first aid kit, and we do bring first aid kits. I just don't have it on that list. I need to add it. All right, so here is my backpack. It's a 50 plus 10, so it's 60 basically cubic inches. Pretty small backpack. Most men carry about a 70 or bigger. But you can see my tent is there with the poles kind of in the greenish color. My sleeping bag is there in the little gray color. And my sleeping pad is in the black. And these things are very small. I mean, I see people bringing sleeping bags that are 5 times the size of this one, and they have to tie it onto their backpack, and it's bulky. And so get good gear, get good small stuff that rolls up, down, or whatever it might be, but get light gear, and that will help you a great deal if you plan on backpacking. And You don't have to backpack very far to get off the beaten path. I mean, 2.5 miles was fine. 2 miles would have been fine. But you go back 10 miles, and that's quite a ways. But it's when we were younger, we did that, and like I said, we did that last year. But it was a long hike. So, but backpacking is wonderful. Like I say, you see things that most people don't see. This is Square Top Mountain, Upper Green River Lake you're looking at, and people can walk here. They don't in this particular place. They can walk here and see this site. It's one of the prettiest sites in Wyoming. But there are a lot of other sites too that you can't walk to. You've got to go backpacking to see these beautiful sites. And so there are things out there that you get to see. You get to see animals. You get to see lakes and be where most people haven't been. And it's a very good feeling. Now, this is Orly. Orly is 76 years old. He went on our trip. He's been on several of our trips. He does very well. But 76 years old is, you're doing pretty good at 76. He caught this big brown trout out of the lower Green River Lake. And, of course, we ate it. We either throw the fish back or we eat them. And trout right out of the lake is wonderful. Very, very mild and stuff. If you take it home and try to freeze it or something, it gets bacteria on it and it gets really fishy, and I don't like it as much then. But right out of the lake is wonderful, and so we eat this fish, and that's why we don't have to bring as much food. So that's it. Backpacking. I love backpacking, and I'm going to be doing it as long as I can. I may be driving up to the lake and taking my walker and putting my backpack on and walking down to the lake or something, but I've enjoyed it because I've seen things that most people don't see, and I see the beauty of, in my case, Wyoming, but there's beauty all over the place that you can see when you backpack. So thanks for tuning in. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Do have a free class out there from our tax school, the Video CPA's Targeted Tax Training. And the free class right now, I think, is on like-kind exchanges. I did a YouTube on the other channel on like-kind exchanges, but this one goes into much more depth. So if you need more information on like-kind exchanges, go out there. It's about, I think it's an hour-and-a-half course or something. It'll take you about an hour and a half. If you need continuing education, it'll be approved for continuing education, not too much longer. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.